Deputy Speaker. My grievance today is also to the Minister for the Environment, and I want to thank the Minister for taking my grievance on this very important issue. Minister, my grievance today relates to the recent decision of the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation, DWER, to refuse an application by Brakovich Landfill and Recycling to amend landfill licence L6764 1997-14 under the Environmental Protection Act 1986. As you are aware, that application sought permission to accept and bury asbestos-containing material at their site at 501 Alexander Drive in Mirrabooka. Minister, I first raised the issues associated with the proposed waste site in Mirrabooka in Parliament in June of this year as a grievance to the Minister for Planning. Now, this time the proponent was seeking planning approval through a development application, DA 240287, for a proposed change of land use for the land at 501 Alexander Drive, Mirrabooka. In my previous grievance, I outlined some of the history of the site, and I don't intend to do that again today, but in short, the site's been used for industrial purposes since about 1954. However, it's now largely in a residential area surrounded by houses, schools, childcare and an aged care centre. Now, despite being used for industrial purposes under the Metropolitan Regional Scheme introduced in 1963, the land is reserved for parks and recreation purposes. So residents were understandably very concerned when they learned about the change of use proposed in that DA to industry noxious solid waste depot, particularly the prospect that it would allow harmful substances within close proximity to residential areas and put residents and vulnerable people like children and the elderly at risk. Since the community became aware of the proposal in May this year, I've met and spoken with many of the residents who are concerned about the application. The Honourable Amber Jade Sanderson, member for Morley, has also been meeting and speaking with concerned residents from her community as the proposed site adjoins her electorate of Morley, and we've been working closely together on this matter. I assisted local residents with a parliamentary petition which was tabled on 19 June in the Legislative Assembly, asking the Legislative Assembly to reject the application. It consisted of 1,443 signatures and 14 non-conforming signatures, underlining the considerable community concerned about the proposed use of the site. In my response to the grievance in May, the Minister for Planning advised that 417 submissions had been received by the City of Stirling as part of the community consultation. 411 of those opposed the development. The Planning Commission considered the development application at their meeting of the Statutory Planning Committee on the 10th of July, and in their decision they imposed a number of strict conditions on the site, including banning any disposal of hazardous material, including asbestos. Unfortunately, the proponent has now appealed the decision to the State Administrative Tribunal, and we await an outcome from that body in relation to the conditions imposed by the WAPC. Now, I note that these matters are not within your portfolio responsibility, Minister, and that you're probably unlikely to provide any update about the planning issues today, but I've included them because they're part of the context for my grievance. But as part of a separate process, the proponent also sought approval from DWER to accept and bury asbestos-containing material on the site. Now, DWER's now concluded their assessment, and my community has enthusiastically welcomed the decision to refuse the amendment to the landfill licence to allow for asbestos on this site. As part of the assessment undertaken by DWER, they considered submissions from the City of Stirling, the Department of Health and others, and over 90 community submissions, and I know that many residents in my community submitted their concerns as part of this process. While my communities welcomed the decision, there remains ongoing concern about ensuring that the proponent complies with the decision. So we particularly welcome the statement in the DWER media release of 2nd of October that states, given the high level of community concern, proactive inspections of this facility will be undertaken to ensure compliance. Minister, I've written to you this week to seek your assistance in arranging an urgent briefing with DWER so I can better understand the proactive inspections that will be undertaken by them. I am particularly focused on ensuring that my community receive ongoing, timely and accurate information on this matter. I've been working hard since May, personally speaking to many residents who have contacted me about this and door knocking in the community, and I've been working hard to keep residents informed about what's going on, as I know the member for Morley has as well. Unfortunately, there's been some particularly unhelpful material circulating in our community. It's caused unnecessary concern by suggesting that our government was approving a toxic waste dump on the site. In reality, firstly, the independent assessment process of Delure was occurring in accordance with their legislated processes, and secondly, rather than approving asbestos on the site, the member for Morley and I have always stood with the community in opposing asbestos being handled there. One resident told me they'd signed an online petition circulated on Facebook and now find themselves receiving regular emails from the Liberal Party. Minister, I note he also told me that he always votes Labor, so the emails he's receiving is unlikely to change his vote anyway. So, Minister, regardless of these distractions, I want to assure the community today that I'll continue to work with the member for Morley and the ministers of this government and the community to oppose the handling and burying of asbestos on this site. I'll continue to work closely with the community to ensure their views on this matter are heard, including raising them in this parliament. And the member for Morley and I will continue to ensure, importantly, that people have access to reliable, timely and accurate information about the situation. So, Minister, I want to thank you for taking my grievance on this very important issue today and listening to the concerns of the many people in my community and the member for Morley's community who are concerned about this. Minister, can you confirm that there are no approvals for asbestos to be handled on this site? And can you also provide additional information about what action can be taken to ensure the proponent does not handle any asbestos on site? And can you provide any further information to my community about this most important issue? Thank you.
Thank you, Member. Minister,
thank you, Member for Mirrabooka, for your giving the opportunity to bring clarity to this issue and certainty, which has been lacking. And I understand the opposition has been engaged in some pretty deplorable, dirty trick campaigns to mislead the community. So it's important we get the truth of what's happening out. So I want to thank you and the member for Morley for your strong advocacy on this important issue. As the member for Mirrabooka has identified, this issue has been weaponised by some in the community. They have spread disinformation and it has caused panic and alarm, a deplorable act by certain individuals from certain parties. In contrast to that, the members for Mirrabooka and Morley have continually calmly advocated and strongly advocated for their community's interest, and they should be commended for their leadership on this matter. I want to be clear, the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation has rejected the licence holder's application to dump asbestos at 501 Alexander Drive, and under the Environmental Protection Act, that decision is final and cannot be appealed. As the member noted, local residents would be aware the property has been used as a landfill site since about 1977. It was previously operated by Atlas Brick, and currently waste is buried at the site so it can be filled and prepared for rehabilitation into public open space, and this will eventually mean more space for families and more trees and greenery to help cool our growing suburbs. Thankfully, regulation of landfill has changed substantially since the Mirrabooka site started operating and is now subject to strict licence conditions under the EPA Act. It has not been permitted to accept or bury putrescible waste like household rubbish since 1997. I think that's about 27 years. This is not in dispute, and for anyone to say otherwise, it is dishonest, if not totally irresponsible. In October 23, the current licence holder, Brakovich Landfill and Recycling, applied to the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation for amendments to its licence, and one of those proposed amendments would have allowed the facility to accept and bury asbestos. Now, that licence amendment application was advertised twice, in December of 23 and June of 24, inviting submissions from the community. Keenly inviting them. I understand local residents' concerns. Regardless of any environmental impact, few people want to live near a site that buries asbestos waste, which is reflected in the department having received more than 130 stakeholder submissions. And I'd like to thank everyone who made a submission and had their say on this issue. As a result of you and others having your say, the department, and as well as feedback from the Department of Health and the City of Stirling, the department undertook a detailed risk assessment in accordance with its own rigorous and independent guidelines and concluded that the risk of asbestos exposure to residents, aged care and schools was simply unacceptable. On the 6th of September, the department informed the licence holder of its intention to refuse their application and gave them the statutory 21 days to appeal under law. After receiving no appeal from the licence holder, the department formally refused the application on the 2nd of October. Now, this means the facility continues to operate under their unchanged licence, allowing non-hazardous and biodegradable waste to be landfilled at the site, and I stress, asbestos cannot be buried there under any circumstances. This has been the case for almost 3 decades and will continue to be the case for years to come. The department's decision is in keeping with our state government's commitment to enforcing our environmental laws. Now, given the community's concern about this issue, proactive inspections of the Mirrabooka landfill will now be undertaken to ensure the licence holder is compliant with the rules. And let me assure you, Member for Mirrabooka and Member for Morley, that any non-compliance will be dealt with swiftly according with the department's policy, and could include prosecution and revocation of their existing licence. Now, since the asbestos amendment application was refused, I note the licence holder has lodged a fresh licence amendment application to operate a solid waste depot at the site. If the latest application is assessed, it will be advertised for public comment on the Department of Water and Environmental Regulations website, and the department will write to all of the stakeholders who made submissions about asbestos. They will consider whether the latest application is consistent with the WA Planning Commission's development approval for the landfill and solid waste depot at the site, which includes a condition specifying no asbestos, no putrescible waste or other hazardous materials are to be disposed on site. So while this new application may concern some in the community, I want to be clear, regardless of the outcome, there is currently no application to bury asbestos at the site. This matter has been dealt with and is settled, and if community members are concerned, I encourage them to have their say during the public submission period. I'm confident the department will carefully consider all comments and thoroughly assess potential environmental impacts when determining if this project is acceptable, as it did with the application to bury asbestos at the site. Thank you, Member.
Thank you, Minister.
Deputy Speaker.
Member for Cottesloe.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, my grievance is to the Minister for Tourism and Treasurer.